Hi, in January I went to do a reductive lino cutting course with this lovely lady, Lisa Hooper, who lives in Dumfries and Galloway. She's the absolute queen of the reductive lino cut, and she uses a graphics package to help her design her work. I'm a little less high-tech than Lisa, so the design I took to do my reductive lino cut with her was this. It's of a stalking heron at the Bull na Craig over in Stornoway, which is a place I'm very, very keen on. I did lots of little preparatory drawings and ideas about this heron, but this is the final design that I came up with. Now, the thing with a reductive lino cut is that you progressively destroy the plate as you come down through your layers, which you probably know. And you end up potentially with no plate at all. It's often called suicide printing. So I went down from my lightest layer, from my white to my yellow to my grey, into my brown and my dark brown. And then I decided that I wouldn't destroy the plate any further. So what I want to experiment with today is whether it's still possible to take an image off this plate. So I'm going to come across to my inking desk here. And I've got a lovely mixture of Payne's grey and yellow. And I'm just going to ink up quite carefully. When the plates are a bit thin, you have to just watch what you're doing with your roller, that it doesn't catch on bits you don't want it to. And you get this nice sheen. When you know it's ready, can you see how that sheens? And there's a little bit there I can see I've missed. So that allows you to see the plate a little bit more clearly, and there is clearly still a design on here. Now, if I'd been more prepared, I could have had some really nice painted backgrounds that I could have painted this on. But I'm just going to print it with white paper through the press. So here's my board in place on my press, and I'm just going to mask. Because I'm a mixed media artist, I'm using that as being an excuse for being a very scruffy, rather mucky printmaker. You can probably see that in the state of my blankets. Most printmakers would not be happy with the state of my blankets. So I've just masked the edge of my print, and we bob the paper on, bring down the blankets, and keep our fingers crossed. So not too much pressure, I can just feel that biting. I'll just bring it back through. And this is where I get excited as a mixed media artist. If I was purely a lino printer, well, I can see here the press is slightly tight, and for a printmaker that would be catastrophic. But for a mixed media printmaker, that's okay. So we get a really nice black and white print off that, but it's still actually slightly dull. So I was playing around earlier with this rather wonderful ombre paper. Ombre paper is paper that's pre-printed with light fast inks, and it has this lovely gradation from dark to light. And I thought I'd do a purple, so I did exactly the same, and I popped it through on my purple, and I thought, yes, now we're cooking on gas. And all that needed to really bring it to life was its little orange moon. And as a mixed media artist, I begin to get quite excited about this now. I'm not pretending this is a high quality piece of printmaking, it isn't, but in terms of collage material and potential for moving the work forward, I can print off loads of these and have really exciting starting points. So here's the print that we did a minute or two ago, and you can see that it's slightly fuzzy because I've got the pressure actually on the press slightly too tight, and we can confirm that because it's actually slightly embossed. Now sometimes that can be quite nice, but actually what that has done, it's pushed the ink a little bit too hard, so I've kind of lost my definition. So I tried it again, and I got a much nicer print. by just taking the pressure back just that little bit. And as you can see, I've begun to start playing around with this a little bit and adding in just a few more tones. So this is pencil and just a bit of pencil crayon, and you begin to get something that's really quite satisfactory and quite interesting. It might make a little illustration for a story, it might make a card, but the fact of doing this is it's about experimenting. It's about not becoming too precious about my endpoints and just getting excited about that process. So I then had a go at printing on vibrant orange, which really says something different. It gives the whole thing a different feel to it, but in and of itself that doesn't excite me. So then I went and did the orange on white paper and I began to play around with it, and that begins to interest me artistically and as a mixed media artist. I would still tone down some of this orange, perhaps by using a white fine liner, because that's just a little bit strong, but I can begin to see something beginning to build. I could even, begin to use some of my original sketches and begin to build them into play. And then this funny little piece, this was a byproduct of when I printed on the ombre paper. If you remember the ombre papers, these lovely colours, and you can buy pads of this, so you can see the excitement. This just came from Hobbycraft. Look how lovely that would look, how exciting potentially that would be. It's obviously not as wide as the plate, and if I'd put that through my printing press, this end would have printed on the blanket. So what I chose to do was print it on some thin white card. So initially what I had, if you imagine that and that was together, that's that section. When it came off the press, I then printed again and I got the ghost, which begins to look quite exciting to me, and it's overprinted the rocks again, and there's the first bit. And again, this is how I love working. I'm beginning to get something that visually begins to excite me, beginning to tell a story about a moment in time and space. So there we go. So give you a few ideas about my working methods and why I call myself a mixed media printmaker as opposed to just a straightforward printmaker.